That was what really got me. How much was being demonstrated to me right there about how little I understood about the nature of something that looked metal and what it can do and what that implies about the relationship between whatever that big metal thing was and what I'm calling reality is, obviously it was blown out of the water that day. I clearly understood that what I thought I knew of physics was not holding water any longer after that.
Yes, and many children see them too. About 75% of the world's children today are being born with etheric vision. And when your children talk with people and have daydream playmates, the chances are they are actually speaking to some of these people. Because these angels or angelic forces or nature spirits, as they're often called, will often make themselves seen.
And all of a sudden I hear him go, whoa, or, something like that. So I look up. And as I look up, I see this thing.
And I said, I've never seen a butterfly like you before.
I know that the paranormal is real. Listen.
As soon as I spoke to it, it turns around and makes eye contact with me. And then it stands upright.
And it was at that moment that I saw it was like an orange light appear above this row of trees. And from this sort of orange light, this thing appeared. Its wings were actually like sycamore leaf shaped.
And I started talking to them. I'm like, hi, are y'all the dwarves? And I would hear whispers that would say, hi, yeah, you want to play? And it wasn't just my imagination. And I had told him, I'm like, my dwarves, they like beer, And my dad's like, yeah, sure, your dwarves like beer. And they were holding a conversation, and his beer slid upwards instead of downwards, how the house was tilted. And him and my brothers jumped up.
So I stopped calling out Adam, and I'm just kind of, my mind draws a blank, and I stop behind that tree stump. I'm pretty close to it now because I took a few steps forward, and I see this thing.
Interesting.
That's extremely interesting, that last part, because this concept that the Fae are with individuals, it comes up over and over again, and I never know what to make of that. Or they kind of like hitchhiking around with you, but what you're saying is, again, an element I've heard described many times. Also, like, I know what you mean about the bickering, because there's a friction that grows between two people experiencing this phenomenon, which is that understated, or perhaps not stated at all, is this blamey, weird, like, are you losing your mind? Am I losing my mind? Like,
yeah, and that you start to doubt one another, and
correct.
Then that doubt becomes a certain degree of insecurity, and you're like, yeah.
And like a good example, just to go back to this coffee cup, because it's an example I can speak to. I somehow want Julia to really believe and understand that that's her dad the same way that I do. Mm-hmm. And I get a little frustrated with her when I see that she can't go all the way there with her belief. And we've tried to recreate that coffee cup. We've put the most ridiculously piping hot coffee in it, put it in the exact same spot.
Oh, I'm sure. I understand. Yeah.
Like, was it a little thermal lift or something? You know what I mean? Like, sometimes if you put a glass upside down that's wet, it'll slide a little, like this kind of thing. Was it that?
Oh, I can't even begin to tell you how many weird temperature experiments with soda cans and beer cans we've tried. Yeah.
I'm going to get to this can in a second, because I love the fact that you still have the can. You're like a true, I don't know what that makes you, but it just makes you awesome that you still have that can. Because I've said on the show before, and I'll say it again now, probably is a great moment to, I think that you could somehow analyze these duplicated objects, these disappeared and returned objects, and some way, however the mechanism is that these events are occurring.
That was kind of my thought. I was like, well, this is special just because it's still retaining the fingerprint, right? The evidence that something messed with this in some way I can't. and I just felt like that was special to me and to the storytelling itself. As I keep it right where in my studio space where I tattoo, so I could bring it up to everybody and have them examine the can.
One fucking bomb of a conversation starter, honestly. And for anyone listening who, in times past before they'd discovered this show would have discounted their own experiences around object phenomenon, save these things, because the time will come soon enough when some sort of working hypothesis around how the community around the show is going to set testing protocols happens. And if you have something and you've held on to it in good condition, at some juncture, don't be surprised if I come knocking looking to analyze that beer can. You know what I'm saying?
That's
Clyde?
a fantastic point. Yeah.
Yeah.
The fascinating Fay Museum.
Well, I mean, I've heard really interesting details ranging from fingerprints on returned objects that are diminutive and oily to, objects being like a really interesting one that I just recently hope will come on the show was this. This is a paraphrase here, but basically a woman had lost an earring in her teenage years, and 40 years later she had a child. And when she lost the earring in her teenage years, she was having high strangeness and she was starting to believe in fairies, but she shut it down. Many years go by. She has a child. This daughter is now 4 years old. And the mom is now taking her young daughter to the park. And the daughter is sort of running around and looks like she's playing with someone who's not there. And this immediately makes the mother, who's now grown, remember this event with the fairies. And her daughter comes walking out of the bushes in this park. And she goes, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy, they gave me back your earring." And she's holding in her hand. And she's holding in her hand the earring that the woman had lost 24 years later. I know.
Wow.
I know. And so, the degree to which they'll flex in this area of their capabilities is one of my favorite things about the Fae. Because it's so mind-bending, reality-breaking.
And just the time between the lost earring and its return, like the degree of patience that is being displayed in the way that they do their flex is just prime. It's great.
It's a true orchestral composition because it involves time, it involves meaning, it involves an object. There's a prefacing confusion followed by an extended period of time that may often produce forgetting the original event, and then a resolve that then comes crashing in with the biggest timpani you could imagine, because it's like and your whole world is shaking. A couple of analogies that I play around with. How do you describe this phenomenon to someone who's never experienced it? That one, I say, how do you describe the color blue to someone who's been blind since birth?
That's really, yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one, it's like, how do you describe the feeling that overcomes you when you see a duplicate pill bottle? Remember when you're a kid and you spin around in a circle really, really, really fast to make yourself dizzy? And then you lie down on the floor and all your perception is shaking and kind of morphing and shaking back and forth. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, because there's a physiological something that accompanies that sense of dread. Yeah.
Bingo. You feel like the room is deconstructing or something because my hypothesis is that some fundamental aspect of reality has changed around you. And on some quantum level, you are instinctually detecting it, much like a predator is close in the woods. Like something internally is wired to know when that has happened. And the fullness of overcoming feelings is like not easily explained. But just imagine, like, for those listening who haven't experienced this phenomenon but are maybe hoping to, or one day might, you'll know it happened when it's like that, when it's like the whole room caves in on you, so the floor drops out from underneath you, your heart drops into your chest, you feel dizzy, giddy, uplift. It's this mix of heavy emotions all at once. That's how you know that shit's real, is when that happens.
Yep. And you could even take that note a bit further when you look into things like out-of-body experiences, and how I was referencing the meditative stuff earlier. Very common discussion amongst people trying to work toward out-of-body or altered states like that is the fear test, being able to kind of endure exactly what we're describing, but keep your head about you, in a sense, in order to kind of work past that point without totally freaking out. I think that is, again, an inherent part of the process. And again, if these intangible aspects of us are very visible to the observer, that isn't us in these particular situations, then I think that how we deal and cope with that has a lot to do then with where we continue to go with these things.
My take is that when they move an object, like, okay, there's like let me just give it like a synopsis, for lack of a better word. When they do this following sequence, A, take something, or in your case, B, duplicate something. It's on the same level. But
Yeah.
take something and then produce confusion in you. In your case, they produce the confusion by duplicating and delivering the object when you're not actually there and the object shouldn't really exist. That's deeply confusing, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or they take something and then you can't find it, and then, like you're talking about with the cigarettes or many other objects I've heard about on the show, it is returned in a meaningful way, either directly following acknowledgement of some type, or when they themselves have had their fun and are now going to, get the laugh by putting it back.
You can feel it, though, within that, working within that law of confusion, or however it is, there you get the feeling that it's not right as these variables are arranged.
Yeah, are they liminal, or is the confusion they impart upon you where that idea of liminality comes from?
There's a lot of chicken and the egg type of mind experiments you could sort of run through with this when you're talking about that. Yeah, absolutely.
And parables, chicken and the egg, unresolvable parables, become, in my weird intuition around the subject matter, is like that's their fuel cell.
100. Yes. I try to articulate that and have failed to do so, and that's good. That's an excellent way of putting that. Yeah.
Yeah, the more deeply confused you are, the more charged their capabilities become, because it's a dual note being struck between their manipulation of everything and your perception of everything. Time, space, sound, matter, light, you're doing it together, and even though you don't know that you're doing it with them, they need you in order for the illusion to be perceived, and therefore
it's like, how long are you going to make the leash for them to? Yeah.
Like, there's a famous experiment in a book, The Secret Life of Plants, that is demonstrating plant empathy and plant cognition. And what they did is they did simple experiments at first where they would like injure one plant and check its essentially like lie detector test readings to see if it responded.
Okay.
Which they found, okay, if someone injured a plant, the plant did, on a lie detector output show that it was reacting. And then the plant remained connected, and the next day the guy who had hurt the plant, broken a branch, came into the room, and the plant freaked out before the guy even got over to it.
Oh, wow.
Right? And then they went a little bit further from that, and they had the same guy basically do like this thing where he would boil small shrimp and kill them who were alive, and they noticed that the plant was expressing empathy for these dying creatures.
Oh, wow, that's neat.
which they thought, is this in fact the plant demonstrating empathy for dying creatures, or is the plant still somehow reacting to this presence of the man? So they switched the man to another man, same result. And then, very interestingly, they set up a little machine where the shrimp were in a little container, alive and happy, and on a completely randomized timer would drop into boiling water below. And every single time that the living organisms were experiencing distress, the plant would register that same empathy signal.
Oh, wow.
Like when you start to think about like non-traditionally conscious things like a plant exhibiting cognition, empathy, and responses that are analogous to like what we talked about earlier, having a good heart, you start to realize there is an internal scorecard for good acts and bad acts. I don't know how to really articulate that better, but even a plant knows like a happy shrimp from a dying shrimp, and responds accordingly. So when they come in, this is all kind of going somewhere. So when the Fae come in and they move something or do these deeply confusing acts, I think that on some level they're trying to broaden our understanding of what we think is true and what we think is going on. And so like it's a two-part lesson. The first part is, this is an illusion. Did you notice? And then if you do notice, then the corresponding realization that you arrive at is that someone or something did that is the part that they don't show outright, but they are hoping you get to yourself.
That's wow. Yeah, that is an interesting way to think about. Wow. That just blew my mind, because I'm getting, I've sort of got that same sense as well, just like you just described. And as you're explaining that now, I can't help but feel like, in other words, is there a fascinating human podcast? Are they wondering certain things about us? And are we working at this from two sides of trying to figure out the illusion sometimes?
Well, wouldn't that just be the veil?
Right?
Yeah. So for everyone listening, Clyde, thanks again for taking the time to talk with me tonight.
My pleasure, man. I'm really appreciative. Me too. It was a good day for it.
Yeah, we wouldn't have gotten as good of a podcast episode created together if we'd tried yesterday. That's for sure.
Yeah, yesterday was and it just like having the wide open space for it, the birth of it. I've got no more work tonight, so yeah, this was all my mind was on, and it's a great conversation. I can't tell you thank you enough.
I wonder this, like, first of all, how many people out there? Is it 1,000 of us? Is it 10,000? Like, how many have had this stuff go down?
I've really been wondering that myself. I really have, because I would have back in 2020, 2021 or so, I think, was when I first started really. My interest was peaking again, because that was when I met her. We were having a few of the little spooky things, but again, it wasn't until about 2023 that I really dove in. And when I saw just the blossoming of the experiencer community, how many people began springing up, coming forward and saying they were having these different types of experiences, it was extraordinary. And I wonder the same thing. I wonder if contact isn't happening truly from the bottom up in society, and if that isn't how certain things and understanding isn't going to truly come to light,
That's an interesting bit that you just said there too, from the bottom up. I'm partial to that because I don't know how else to put it, but the Fae, like the hard won people, they just like the rough and tumble people that I think what it comes down to, this is just deep intuition and may or may not be correct, because I don't even know 100% that the Fae are what they are, but I think that they know that they can trust those tough motherfuckers out there, men and women alike, and everything in between. They can tell about who's going to be able to handle it, number one, and number two, who's going to be able to, I think, get it through to the other side, almost as though there's a real hope that the veil comes down.
Yeah, and well, if we think about if that was, say, the aim, and like, this is obviously not their first rodeo, and they had to have seen how classically contending with, let's call it, the upper echelon of society has panned out, and maybe this is something that's familiar to them in terms of making contact works out better if you could again, from the bottom up, sort of befriend that society before you actually approach it in any officiated manner or by way of leadership or anything like that, because we again, historically, we know how that kind of works out.
Tristan from season 1, who's like a young experiencer, whose father and him did this remarkable thing where they kept like diaries of 8 years of his experiences. He said something really interesting, which sticks with me. He said, some of these Fae just like to know that you're strong.
That's interesting.
Yeah, before they're gonna bother with you, they have to know that you're tough.
That is it. That's very interesting, because that was even something that Memory had said at one point as we were going through everything. I wouldn't have even have remembered or thought on that if you didn't say that.
If I were able to, say, for example, daylight all of the pre-conversations I've had with all of my guests, I would say that a healthy percentage of them are really tough.
That's a very interesting, because it was before she left. She had actually 2 separate conversations with me where she was really coming to terms with the fact that she didn't want anything to do with anything spooky, and she needed to start a new chapter of her life, and she really felt there was no way that I could be a part of that without there being something spooky. And her reasoning behind that, she said twice aloud to me, was, she said, sometimes I feel like you go through things just because you can survive them. And I was like, what do you mean by that? She's like, I don't know what I mean by that, but I feel like this stuff won't stop around you ever. And that was her adamant kind of feeling about it, because it was almost nonsensical to her. Like, it was like I was just like the near death type of thing when I got the infection, and how long everything was going on with my head. She, from the outside looking into her, it was, that was just her take on it. I didn't really think that hard on it until you said that. It's very interesting.
Going back to that concept of a barbed wire wrapped gift, it sort of does seem to follow in certain individuals.
Quite appropriate.
Yeah, where it's like they push you, you survive it, you get a little bit more of an insight, like a duplicating bottle. They push you again, and so it's like a quid pro quo that's not exactly pleasant for us, the human, because it is a kind of like almost not cruel, but a little detached. Like they know that you're not exactly having a good time, but at least a portion of bad luck, it can be attributed to their testing of you somehow.
That's super interesting. It's like a Fey initiation. That's so interesting.
I just think it's like I think it's friction to, like, like a friction makes the stone smooth, right? And so they're kind of basically they're trying to get a reaction out of you, which, if you fail their testing, could produce they abandon you and no longer escalate contact and no longer bring you closer to understanding. That's part of it, I think. It's like, if you fail to return to that center keel, like I keep talking about, of a good heart, you've let them down somehow, or they're.
That feels accurate.
I know. It is weird to kind of put it in those terms, because I'm also extremely reluctant to say there's a good or bad to it, but I do think the tough is tough, and I think that that's maybe immutable, much like the soul is immortal. I think that souls are uniquely equipped to suffer.
That's yeah, and again, we have no idea if there is, say, an astral plane or this however you want to look at that, whatever the word astral has been used for. I know they kind of abandoned that sort of after the spiritualists, and it just became a new age word we don't like anymore because it's sort of whatever. But this, I really can't help but feel again. There's all of these intangibles, right? How feelings, how reactions play into everything. And again, when I go back to the fact that humans do have the ability to articulate meaning, and in the face of incredible, insurmountable suffering, a human could do something valuable with that. And if that is in this intangible landscape that we're describing, or maybe something of the inner world being projected outward, if that's the realm that we're dealing with, maybe that's an amazing thing for them to witness. That's an interesting perspective.
Also, like, if there's a desire to get the two sides closer together, they gotta know that if they're gonna give you keys to a nuclear bomb, they can trust you with it. And
Yeah.
I do think that on some level, humanity as a whole continuously has failed to meet that challenge. And that may be why they like underdogs, because much of the proving has already been done in a person who's had a tough life and come out the other side intact with their soul, still on that good heart center keel. And like you rightfully pointed out, they may be much less ready to trust, a Chad in a flashy suit, I don't think that they're,
The values might not align at all, right?
well said.
We have no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, the values. That was the word I was looking for. It's like their judgment or checkbox is entirely different than ours, informed by their status as the superior, for one. And then two, because we don't have the same grasp and ability to manipulate time, space, and matter, they've got us, pretty well boxed in. And, so the lessons that are being learned are ours to learn, not necessarily theirs to learn. And that's the weirdest part about the phenomena. If you get deep enough into it, you kind of get the sense that, okay, they're like a superior class of entity. And it's not that they don't like us, but they're deeply disappointed. And they are trying to single out those that they can trust in their own weird, convoluted ways of doing that kind of testing.
That's insanely accurate to my experience and my own unique perspectives as well. That's very wow. That's super insightful. I keep saying that, but that really truly is. It's funny too because you were even earlier when we were mentioning you were talking about art and the creative end of things and how relevant that is to all of the phenomenal. And that's been like such a key focus in my mind, especially now on the other side of all of the different types of brands of suffering I went through, that I get the distinct notion, especially as I'm tattooing and stuff, that like good ideas, good creative ideas, they feel truly as like a gift. I genuinely don't take credit for that type of thing. When I'm doing an amazing piece or something like that, I generally work very large scale projects that take insane amounts of time, and I remain cognizant the whole way through to try to not take credit for that wholly, because I definitely felt like it's a collaborative experience on that, again, intangible plane, and that's all I can say about that, but it rings very true with what you're saying now. And how their values very, very different from ours. Very different from ours.
It's so funny because we talk about the Fae like we, could go have a coffee with them, but we still don't exactly know like where they reside and any of this for sure. However, as like, I'm first of all, let me just kind of punctuate this thought by saying this first. When you started talking with me, and a couple times during the conversation, you've talked about how prior to these high strangeness experiences, you were much more of a material-minded person, myself included, right? And so,
yeah,
to find myself speaking about fairies and how they judge us and what the greater purpose of fairy contact is a huge leap, not just for the audience listening who might be uninitiated, but even for me, a person who's neck deep in the mud here. But when you start to kind of get through the stages of understanding, the first one being they are here, then two, like having a direct experience, we'll call it like a pill bottle duplicating. And then you start to go like branching out from there. After you've had enough beer, mysteriously move from one secure can
The
to
face of it changes as it moves on. Absolutely.
That's right. And you eventually are left with the question of, well, why? And is there some sort of logic to this? Is there a predestination to life? Is that how they do the time tricks? Or is it like you're being tested and chosen for maybe work you don't even know that you're doing? Is there?
And I do think that it's kind of a little bit of all of that. Maybe a little bit of how we looked at the muses in the ancient Greek.
That's the flip side, like you're saying in your tattoo work, and many people I speak to, is that the relationship is reciprocal. Tristan, again, like just to kind of go back to something that he said, which sticks with me as we're talking. He said, I asked him, I said, well, why do you think they do it at all? Like, why are they messing with certain people or people in general or whatever? Like, why do you think they do it? And he hypothesizes without clear definition that perhaps what happens here impacts there. Like the emotions and experiences being had on Earth may somehow impact there. And I don't know if you remember the children's movie, The Never-Ending Story.
Oh, absolutely. Huge fan of 80s fantasy. Big fan of 80s fantasy, yeah.
Well, among the many cool things in that movie, aside from the racing snail and a lot of my other favorite parts, is the idea that there's the nothing that's coming,
Mm-hmm.
And this idea of the nothing, like, is our failure to rise to our duty as human beings somehow doing something similar to the Fey realm, which is making it succumb to the nothing, and when they get us curious and when they jar us out of our seats and when they get the creatives that they're trying to talk to aware, does it give them something back? Because in the movie, The Never-Ending Story, it's like the love between Atreyu and the princess that eventually stops the nothing.
Well, and in movies, I mean, how many thematics in movies aren't very, very easy to correlate to different aspects of what's actually being experienced with the phenomenal? Like, man.
Yeah, movies sometimes read more like documentaries.
Well, it goes back to that. Again, the muses, if there is some value in this intangible space to them, we don't know what's necessarily being accomplished by them working with their perhaps premier writer or their artist of choice or their musician of choice. Perhaps there is really some significant thing being accomplished by getting through with the work that they need to see accomplished, whether that's also to the ends of informing us more of the nature of what comprises the different sides of our reality, or if there isn't an actual immediate implication or value to that side of things. That intangible side of things, of course, remains to be seen. But again, I think that's where it's beyond me now, but I've been invested in meditation for a long time, and specifically in the last few years after experiencing all this, I feel like the however many days I've got left on this rock will be spent trying to address that. I really do believe in the work like the Monroe Institute does with the out of body experience, and I think that might be the only place we could. That might be the way that we go to find at least some of these, maybe not answers, but the sense about things.
right now on the other side of the veil, like here, it's Jim and Clyde on the Fascinating Fae show. Over there, they've got the Pondering People show, and one fairy is asking another, if we give them more strange candy, will they stop killing each other, do you think?
Yeah.
If we can trip them out with beer enough, will they eventually live up to their potential as creatives and, bring back this time, this golden age when Fae and humans cohabited? The mind really does start to go like funny places when you start to really, accept, okay, these guys are real. It's a whole society. There's an agenda. What happens in human life affects them. It's like the greatest fantasy sci-fi movie you could imagine.
It really is. If you start to level with yourself and realize that there is truly a bridge, right, between there and here, that is where it becomes you're living that sci-fi fantasy. We all are right now, and I do kind of feel, as cliche as it sounds, like we are on this planet at a very unique time as far as all that's concerned, right? The spiritualists believed in it 100 years ago. Been talking about the age of Aquarius since like Dion Fortune wrote Psychic Self-Defense, so here we are 100 years later at the precipice of what a lot of great thinkers and voices on this stuff have talked about for some time. So yeah, I mean, I feel like all bets are off now, and it's no accident we are who we are doing what we're doing right now, if we're on the planet at this time.
As wide ranging as this conversation might appear, just in its length, it still is not enough time to line up all these dominoes. And tonight we've lined up multiple dominoes. I really do.
We've covered a scope. We have.
Yeah, we really have. And that is enabled principally by your amazing storytelling and the depth and breadth of experiences that you've had, Clyde. So let's go back and let me ask you some questions about.
Yeah, we'll get to the questions there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask a few more questions about some of these stories you've shared. And when I say stories, I just mean some of the events you've recounted. And then I'll, do my wind down and, keep this one to like 3 hours instead of 2, out of respect for your time and out of respect for the audience's time.
Sounds good.
The beer one, I mean, I think we've covered enough that even though I still want to ask more questions about the beer, I'm just going to, breeze past that one for a second. And
I'll send you a picture of the can when we're done.
Okay, well, that's show notes gold, so please do. There's things that you want in your life as a podcaster on the paranormal, and then there's things you want, and I want that picture of that can. I actually want that can, to be honest, and I want to put it under an electron microscope and see if there's a fairy fingerprint or something that we just can't see with the naked eye. But I digress.
Oh, we could work this out. There could be a part 2, but yes, go on.
Well, there likely will be a part 2 to it all, is my grand hope. But I digress again. So, okay, this experience that you had where you saw this plane without wings. It's really interesting how you're describing the kind of pivoting motion in the center, as though it were on a top, or like as though it were.
Yes, super uncanny valley, very distinct.
And then also like watching it essentially modulate into a point of light. This is a really interesting part of your story because, the Fascinating Fae logo is like a alien spaceship / orb.
I love the logo, yeah.
Beaming up a Sasquatch who's, in a forest with a bunch of fairies and gnomes. And a sky full of orbs. And that might seem like a ridiculous logo to jam all that into one logo until you talk to somebody like Clyde.
Until you have enough experience. Yeah, then you realize, yes.
And then you start to say, oh, it is like an interdimensional soup, kind of like a series of entity classes ranging from ghost to fairy to cryptid to alien to non-human intelligence, and anything that you want to jam in there in between, be it leprechaun or shadow person or ooze blob or whatever, is as out there as you might want to get. There's a high likelihood that on some vibrational plane or frequency plane, that thing is a real thing, is what I come to basically decide. And that all paranormal is under one umbrella of interrelated experiences. I don't think a ghost experience, which like the moving coffee cup, you could say is ghost, that's maybe pretty straightforward. A dead dad, a coffee cup that's associated with him moving. But at the exact same time, fairies move stuff the identical way.
And we don't know who's working with who and why. And there's so many different ways you can go with it, but you're at the heart of, I think, where we are right now with this, and certainly at least where my heart is with it. And I think a lot of people who are truly vested in these topics is right. Like if we could say we're getting anywhere, it's with the taxonomy of the phenomenal right now. That is the one thing that I think, just by merit of how things are being discussed and the way communication is so infinitely more, upgraded beyond our expectations of what we ever thought communication would be. And in the exchange of these stories, that's sort of where we're getting, right? We are beginning to understand exactly what you're saying, that it is all under an umbrella. So we are discovering, I think taxonomy is the right word for it.
It is. I always say non-taxonomically classified energy animals is what all of these things are.
That's great. Yes.
Like the same way that's a dog and that's a cow, those are taxonomically categorized. You're going to eventually, on that same schema, have fairy, pixie,
exactly,
troll, leprechaun, unicorn, mermaid. I'm not joking. Like, I know, at the risk of conflating the focus of this show, which is to talk about fairies, the truth is that there's one underlying logical infrastructure that makes up reality, and all of these entity classes, on a greater or lesser degree, are doing tricks. And again, tricks is not the right word, but more like just using capabilities that they possess is a better way to put it, within a logical framework that has boundaries and has working logic to it, like any other system. And so, the fact that a coffee cup can move or a pill bottle can duplicate is educational about the nature of reality, which is that, again, it's illusory, and that therefore all experience contains meaning and is basically a type of information exchange.
Yeah.
More than it is a real object interacting with another real object. That's true too, but it's just, even that, once you have a pill bottle duplicate, or in my case, like this coffee cup move, or other things that have happened in both mine and your cases, then the lesson is totally on. Like, now you are able to understand, perhaps for the first time ever, born anew, what the hell this has been all about the entire time.
And that was kind of, talking on this relative to the plane with no wings, their cigar-shaped craft. That was what really got me. How much was being demonstrated to me right there about how little I understood about the nature of something that looked metal and what it can do, and what that implies about the relationship between whatever that big metal thing was and what I'm calling reality. Is, obviously it was blown out of the water that day. I clearly understood that what I thought I knew of physics was not holding water any longer after that.
And I think, again, I'll have to edit this back to see how concise it is. I think we've actually been pretty concise. I fully believe you, and I fully believe all of the sequence of experiences and the wide variety of them, because I do think there's an escalation of the lesson. And when you finally arrive at okay, reality is able to be modulated and fairies are a kind of entity class, then it is not that big of a leap to redefine the concept of a craft like you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
It fully sleeves right in there with no friction. It's just like the second glove to the first one that you already have on. Now both your hands are warm, because you can't stop it at it's just fairies. There's nothing other than
No,
fairies.
exactly. Yeah. That's why I was saying what I was saying earlier about the exclusivity versus inclusive. And you kind of you can't help but arrive at that point eventually, or your mind will break on the way there with the gymnastics you're trying to perform to do it.
Yeah, and somewhere beyond that veil, all of these yet to be taxonomically classified energy animals are having a damn good chuckle at us, scratching our heads
Yeah,
and
right.
navels on this side. And without even asking my question, I think I kind of got to what I wanted to ask, which is like, what do you think that was, and what do you think the purpose of that, sighting was, as it fits contextually within the scope of your storytelling?
So what was really interesting about that I want to highlight was just how much I was wrestling with the notion of, well, why am I seeking to have this contact experience? I'm meditating and reaching out to in my mind. It could potentially be reckless, could be a risk involved, but I'm doing it anyways. Why am I doing it? Was it truly because I just wanted some type of evidence to show other people? Was it that I wanted to prove to other people I wasn't nuts with how invested I was becoming with the disclosure party? Was it for any of these reasons that could be looked at as a degree of insecurity, or was it just purely for myself and trying to justify what I was doing and deal with it on my own? All of those were things that I was meditating on. I mean, like nonstop in the weeks prior to that, and that it did appear only after I had truly reconciled in myself. I'm not going to take any photographs or any video of if the type of irrefutable contact experience occurs. I'm not going to disrespect that in any way by trying to gather evidences of that. And it was after that not only did I have a sense of relief from trying to mull over those questions like they were very real, and I was treating them like they were very real, but then the presentation that followed sort of validated something to me, and that experience that I was having in my inner world was being reflected outwardly in a way. Uh, and initially, it's funny because at first, the way I took that was kind of, I don't know, I guess you'd say at face value. I wasn't really thinking that what I was experiencing, like when I'm looking at the world around me, I was still at that point thinking that everything is outside of me. And I think it was that experience that really got me to stop and think, wait a second, maybe I am not a brain with consciousness inside of it, but I am a brain inside of consciousness. And that's why this is able to be the way that it is or seem the way that it is. So there was a fundamental shift in the way I started looking at things after that. There was.
You're a really cool guy, man. I mean, world-class tattoo artist, world-class thinker, and excellent communicator. I'm really just having such a great time. Well, I mean all those things, and for that matter, they're all true. But I'm having a really good time talking with you. I mean, I could unapologetically talk to you for 5 hours, but that's bad podcasting. So what I'll do here is, I mean, absent, the desire to have you back a second time, which I think, we'll just concur. Let's have you back sometime in the future.
Yeah, I'd happily, man, for sure.
And that would afford more in-depth questioning, or questions being asked, not questioning, but questions being asked about some of these other events that are worthy of, exploration on their own. But, I really want to thank you before I kind of, again, move to sort of gently bring this conversation to its conclusion. I really want to thank you again for the, ranging from the ibuprofen bottles, the beer, the cigarette pack that you're describing, these, recountings of this object phenomenon. I hope that others listening are encouraged by Clyde's experiences, who have also had a really heavy set of object-related experiences going on in their home or personal lives. Please reach out and talk to me. This is one of the most fascinating aspects of the phenomenon because it draws into so many questions the nature of reality. It's one thing to see a quote-unquote apparition or to hear a voice or communication. It's another thing entirely when it's stuff you can touch and other people can touch. It's somehow
100%. Yep.
and I actually think that when they do that to people, it's like an acknowledgement of them liking you and choosing you because they're giving you something tangible, which very, very few, if any, paranormal experiencers walk away from an event with. But you are an extremely rare air that you've got, a beer bottle with half the beer in it, a beer can with half the beer in it, and that you've got, well, I'm assuming you used at least one of those bottles of the ibuprofen because it was that time of the month, but
Yeah, she went through both of those. Yeah, unfortunately, we could not save those.
You gotta wonder, like, on some level, was the fairy one stronger? Man, you should have gotten that one analyzed. Maybe there's a new drug company there.
I think about that. I think about my ghost hunting days from 20 years ago when I was a wee lad, and I actually had a house fire that I lost most of the stuff in, but I had quite the collection from that time period, despite the fact that I'd sort of moved on from it. Still have some of those photos around. That's a story for part 2 for sure, but. Well, like I said, maybe someday we'll have you'll get the fascinating Fey Museum.
Well, we can all dream of big things, and that might not be like that far from the map, because if there's enough of these objects out there, which is my hypothesis, and enough, I don't know, traction or whatever happens with the show that people start coming forward, you could get a pretty healthy supply of these objects together.
For sure.
I've had a number of my listeners and previous guests say, just tell me when, I'll FedEx you the stuff in an evidence bag kind of thing, like.
Absolutely.
And as far as I can tell, no one is actually doing that right now. There's been a couple of paranormal challenges around.
You get the haunted museums, but that's what I mean. That's it. That's as far as it goes. And again, very, very narrow, closed kind of narrative, right? That needs to kind of sort of equip each item and stuff. And no, the Fae thing, there's not. I think who's the guy? Aimimo-san, who was doing he was the guy who was responsible for bringing forth the Nazca mummies at the Mexican hearing that they had in 2023. He also was promoting and talking about the Bugosphere most recently. He actually has a few things that he believed were Fae or fairy evidences by way of little corpses that he tried to get tested, and has quite the little collection going. But that's the only one I know of that I've ever come across. And it was sort of just, I believe in his case, like he would just get a cacophony of things set from him, from all of his listeners. It wasn't specific to the Fae or anything like that. Oddly enough, when he tried to get those little mummy body things tested, something went wrong. I can't remember what it was, but he was really upset because he spent a lot of money and never got his results.
Do you want to know what I think the missing stabilization factor is?
Go for it.
Collective belief.
I mean, well, that if we're right about all of the not all of, but some of the things that we have said, and that allowance, let's say, for disbelief exists, it has to only for in the interest, let's say, of free will. So maybe you're right. Maybe you are onto something, that if there was no longer, a requisite to honor people's, ability to turn a blind eye, maybe if that wasn't a factor, that would change. That's it. I mean, we certainly see that there's some interaction between cognition and these exotic materials. We know that that's something that obviously governments have a much better idea about. And we've also seen some of those materials in the past supposedly change form, turn to dust when they were being studied, while others didn't. So, I mean, that's, I think there's a strong case for that.
Yeah, and someone on Reddit pointed out this thing about monoatomic gold.
Okay.
Which, when heated, effectively disappears at a certain temperature point, and then only to reappear as it cools, which at first I didn't really understand, but in researching the monoatomic gold phenomenon, it does appear that this is a scientifically repeatable example of the phenomenon that we are describing, at least partially.
Okay. I have heard of that in passing, and did not have familiarity with it. That's interesting.
Worth a rabbit hole dive for anyone listening, and maybe in a future episode when I've educated myself more on it, we'll come back to it. But again, I could talk to you about literally just about anything.
Yeah, this really could turn into a 4-hour episode if you wanted to let it. It really could.
And I really don't have any real objection to that, other than out of respect for everyone's time, I try to keep it a little shorter.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Okay, so when you come back, I'll get into some of these questions about the days when you kind of awoke to see the sun was down and you have this missing time. I would like to ask, maybe if your partner is willing to, that might be a good occasion for a second episode to hear her personal version of the event where there was like a owl component.
I mean, I'd love to try. Like I said, I couldn't get her to talk about that again at any point, that particularly. So I can't make any promises, but I could certainly try. We'll see what happens.
Well, perhaps after listening to this episode, she may feel more comfortable. But the similarities there in what I experienced, not just to that event, but I think to the whole breadth of the conversation today, are remarkable to me, because I struggle with this one. When I saw that fairy one time, that was like a trippy thing, and I just thought nothing ever would happen again. But it wasn't until I opened my mind to that experience and started down the path of starting this show, which is a shared, like I'm sharing this so everyone can follow what's going on with me and my thinking pretty much the whole time I'm making the show. It's like documenting my thought process. Then more super strange stuff has happened just within the framework and the narrow box of this show.
Oh, completely. That makes a ton of sense to me. Go on. I didn't mean to interrupt there.
No, but it's like, to validate you as a lifelong experiencer, quote unquote, or a multi-event experiencer, that is a real thing. And for me, I would have first said, you saw a fairy, what do you mean? Or something moved, what are you talking about? But now today, 2 years into the podcast, and almost now, 6, getting on 7 years fully removed from the event back in 2019, what's happened is that more stuff than I could have ever imagined has unfolded in my life, just like you're describing. And for whatever reason, the parallels need a spreadsheet. Owls, objects moving, confusion over time, craft moving and behaving in non-traditional ways, technology functioning beyond function. Like, just about every, I guess, component of the phenomena that over 2 years has come up in these episodes is being experienced by yourself and by myself and by many, many others. It's not an isolated thing to have a lot of this stuff happening seemingly without logic.
That's a really good point. In that you can, as you observe all of this over time, start to recognize that we are, for lack of a better way of putting it, opening and closing doors. You do eventually get that aha moment where you begin to see kind of how that works. And then when you're kosher with it, and I mean, it's not necessarily for everybody, I think, in every lifetime, but that's where we learn these metaphysical lessons, right? When we are aware, okay, there is a way that we could begin to interface, and then we could perturb the system, and then we are willingly doing that from an ethical stance, right? That is, you'll open that door and you will see more stuff happen in your life. You will invite these experiences in, and they, for as phenomenal as they are and appropriate as the term phenomenon is for it, it does become something of an unbelievable, I don't even know how it's just kind of part and parcel to your entire day. And that for as much as that might be a scary way for some to live, I think that's a very enchanted way for a lot of people to live too. So beauty in the eye of the beholder and all of that, far be it for me to tell people what to believe or think on to enrich their life or day, but it certainly colors mine to be a little bit more interesting than it would otherwise.
You said this earlier in our conversation too, just to feed that back to you, that it's like a richer experience of life, I think might be how you put it earlier. And
Yeah, and I really feel like that is part of the point. I really do.
I think that, it is, it's not for the faint of heart, this whole thing, but my goodness, do you ever get a lot out of it if you can get yourself to the other side of it and stabilize your understanding and walk a little bit more confidently in it and a little bit less confused. I mean, they're never going to let you understand it fully. That's also been really clear to me. I don't think you're going to go through enough levels in the video
because then it
game.
would be over, right? It would be done. Yeah. What would the fun in that be?
Probably you get closer to the conclusion of video game levels after your death, aka closer to full understanding. But even then, you might just find yourself quickly reborn and right back on another ride on this particular roller coaster that we call life. But waxing poetic is, again, I really am enjoying doing with you about the conceptual stuff. Let's put a pin on that by asking you this question.
Yeah, because there is a lot of directions that one could go to from there. So yeah, that should be for part 2.
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about the logo. I'll bring it up here again, not to like self-promote, but that logo pretty much visually sums up what I think about the whole subject best. Everything is under one umbrella, one soup. And talking with you is, I think, probably one of my favorite episodes as it relates to that concept, because you've had that multiplicity of events that, I really am interested in a second here before we go, to understand that thought process in one synopsis about how you went from this is strange, this is aliens, to, getting to that acceptance of Fae. So let me just ask you this question, which is, I ask everybody on the show. I know this one's coming. No right answer, no wrong answer, of course. Clyde, what do you think fairies are?
Simple answer: astral entities. The better fleshed out answer of that is, oh boy, how could I flesh that out to say that? I'm going to leave it at astral entities. I'm just going to leave it at that, because I would sort of like that to be left up for interpretation.
That's a quality answer. I got no opposition to that answer at all. But let me ask you this sort of complimentary question, because I'm not quite ready to let you go and do my sign off. Take me through the moment when you started to accept Fae as a word that you were willing to use. Because my friend, it took me 4 or 5 fucking years before I could say that what I saw was a fairy with a straight face, even to myself.
Well, that's I think so. That was the beginning of it. When I saw the craft, I started thinking very differently about phenomenon, and even how I'd looked at things that I'd experienced earlier in my life, and started realizing that there was this relationship between my internal world and what was happening externally. And it was at that point, somewhere thereafter, that I sort of began with her acceptance of it, with the fact that I realized, had already crossed that bridge in her mind and had believed wholeheartedly in it. I felt that at that point, it didn't even necessarily matter so much whether I didn't want to put a label on it, or thought that label was somehow being exclusory in some sense, because again, it felt like, since she already had crossed that bridge and sort of given these attributions to what we were experiencing, then that became the right word to use, right? Because the attributes that she was sort of equipping our experience with then were reflected in that experience. And that was when it started to feel like stuff like there wasn't tremendous shifts, but things were unlocking in my understanding. The more I started approaching this from, okay, this is obviously some kind of something that's working with our internal world. So the reality that we're creating is, I think, very much one that we exist within, but we don't necessarily get to realize that in any tangible way, at least while we are physical, biological beings, right? So I guess that's the best way I can put it. That, if I extrapolate that, though, what I would be saying is perhaps we are actually detailing, quote unquote, the kingdom, or where it is we do go when we walk through the door. And for some, that might include a place that's occupied by the Fae.
Yeah. You know what? This is such a powerful conversation, this one in particular. I don't know why, I'm not trying to exclude other conversations. Literally, the whole show's a powerful.
We got deep on this. We did. We got some notes I didn't think we were going to get to. We got to some notes I did not believe that we were going to trance into, and I'm glad we did.
Well, here I am saying we should go, and I don't even want to. I just have to ask about this candy now that I'm not done.
Have at it. Have at it.
Okay, so you like these caramels. You go to the bodega, whatever, and you pick up the one that they've got because they're almost sold out, and then a couple of other rando candies. I'm with you.
Yep.
So when you open the first bag, one of them is missing. There's 3 instead of 4.
Yes. And that was the caramels, because we actually opened it to split them because we both love the caramels. Normally I would have only bought the caramels. So we opened that bag first to split them 2 and 2, only to reveal there is not 2 and there's only the 3 in there.
Initially, upon telling, people might have a little bit of a stumble with well, what do you mean you just randomly bought some other candy that you didn't really remember or intend to?
Well, it wasn't, and that's the other thing. It wasn't quite random. I said earlier that I thought I knew what I bought because I did. I had believed that I'd actually, they were almost sold out. I thought I got 2 caramels and one other neutral one. Like we have the peppermint patties were a neutral one. They had a double chocolate patty that was neutral, but the coconut one, I knew she hated coconut. And there were some other ones that were kind of gross there too, like a toffee thing or something like that. And when I got back with them, there was only the one caramel, and one of the other ones was the coconut, and the other one was one I did. So the actual bags of the candy, in other words, what I'm saying.
That's what I was getting at, and I think that that's an important detail for people to distinguish, because maybe upon first telling, people might have heard that a little differently. So thanks for bearing with me and clarifying that.
I swore that we had 2 caramels and I wouldn't have bought you the coconut, but whatever, this is what we have. And then that's where the real meat and potatoes of the situation, pun perhaps intended, came to unravel thereafter.
It's interesting that as soon as we started talking about the candy, the audio just again did a quick flip out. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now let's go back. Well, let's go back. For those listening, there may be a little bit of editing there that seems out of sync, but the audio just flipped off when I was talking with Clyde earlier about the candy again. So before I let you go, I want to ask the questions about the candy again. We were just talking a second ago about the 3 bags of candy, the one being the caramels that you were opening up to split, and then you found that there was only 3 in there. And you were describing to me that the bags of candy that you had initially bought, when you got them home, the second and third bag really didn't strike you as the ones that you had walked out of there with, which I think is very, very interesting.
No, I did not believe. I knew that I didn't get all caramels, but I did believe that I had gotten 2 caramels and one other that she liked. And the selection did not make sense. It did not reflect her tastes or what I would have bought for her. I can't remember exactly which the others were, but did not make sense to me or her. And then it was when we were splitting up the first bag of caramels that we started realizing something was strange, and it only got stranger from there.
Yeah, well, the first thing that's interesting is that there's 3, and that's 1 missing. And then the next bag, this is a different kind of candy. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes.
But in there is one of the caramels?
Is one of the, yes, which was that was super weird.
That's totally implausible. What is that
makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Unless you're thinking fairy logic, in which case it makes utter sense because it's a great joke and a great mind bender. Really interesting.
That was, though. That one immediately pointed, that was when I was saying what I was saying earlier about how the ways that this was expressing itself seemed more and more to reflect attributes of the Fae only after she had identified things as the Fae. which was why that was how I became so much more comfortable with that word, most certainly. And again, whether it's sort of another chicken and the egg, right? What was the manifestations or these presentations taking on that particular, tint, if you will, because of what she was attributing to it, or was she accurate in what she was identifying? I'm still not sure to this day, but it certainly fit the bill.
If you get like a certain kind of Christian on the line, they're going to say, this is a demon. This is a demon.
And that was why I had to word things with the caveat that I did, because I knew there'd be somebody out there listening saying, oh, I know what to call that. And I would have to say, no, I don't think that any of us know what to call anything, but we should be careful with what we do.
Somewhere along the line in these folklore archetypes, someone had to be given some key piece of information that's made it through intact. I think Fae is the word for this particular class of entity. And I think that, like, as much as I hate this, because fuck, have I ever been, guilty of shit talking folklore? It would appear that a healthy portion of that may be pretty accurate in and of itself, especially as it relates to the personality profile that they're giving of these things.
Well, absolutely. But here's another thing I think of, right? When we go back and we look at the way back when history, and we learn, I believe the lore that's reflected is that the Christian missionaries who were coming around telling everybody that everything was a devil or a demon was responsible for kind of ticking off the beings that were most certainly not anything of the sort, right? That was a bit of a control measure to kind of get, and rightfully so, not saying they didn't need that, because things were happening with pagan temples and family sacrifice and babies. I mean, it was nuts. So I'm not saying that was necessarily a bad thing, but I am saying it was a thing. And I'm always very cognizant of that now, right? Like, in other words, if I'm so presumptuous as to say everything I'm dealing with is a demon, might be that might be very insulting to something that doesn't deserve the moniker.
Yeah, it's so sensitive because there's a politics part to belief, and that, especially in the like social media age and podcast age, is all too apparent. Like, it's so weird. Like, you can see some paranormal shows or sites have a political part to it, and it's like there is
completely.
There's like a right-wing paranormal camp, there's a left-wing paranormal camp, as weird as that would appear to be.
Yeah, but that's the way it is. Boy, is it ever.
Well, okay, Clyde, I'll just finish tonight's amazing conversation by doing a little bit of housekeeping, if that's okay with you.
All right.
And as you know, my guests always get the final word. So, meditate for a brief moment while I yammer away about social media and my website. And then I'll let you have that last word. That's okay with you.
Okie doke.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm just going to say this one first. Super big thanks tonight on behalf of all of the human and non-human listeners tuning into Fascinating Fate, to Clyde for coming on and leaving, all of us listening with just hunger for more. There wasn't enough time to ask all the questions that we all want to hear, and I know that that's just because there's just not enough time in a podcast to do it. But you've been so generous with your time and your sharing of your thoughts and feelings. I just have to put the thank you first here tonight. And with that said, you've been listening to Fascinating Fae. I'm your host, Jim. If you've had an encounter or multiple experiences and you'd like to be on the show, just drop me a line via email, encounters@fascinatingfae.com. That's a good place to put a longer written account. And if you want and you're more comfortable, just drop me a line, DM on any traditional social media. You can find the show at Fascinating Fae everywhere you check. And as I've already done my traditional sign off and saying thank you, we've skipped right ahead to your last word here tonight, Clyde. So it's up to you to sign off on this one.
Okay, I'm going to keep this simple. My final word on this one is for folks listening to meditate more and remember that the opposite of love is doubt.
Hey, it's been a quarter century, and there's no use fighting just what way the mind goes. Today, I surrender gently, and the answer all along was under my nose. To say, to smell the earth right after rain, I'm still looking for some things that I can't find. Today, I fought a battle in my brain, and I'm rattling the cage that is my mind. Over hills and through the fiery peaks of love, to a heart so cold it could freeze. Through the woods I walked, a hurricane above, till I could finally see the forest for the trees. Hey, oh, tonight I lay awake, and my meandering mind is on a playground. Today, in creation I embrace all the geniuses in time and all that they found. Say, smell the earth right after rain, I'm still looking for some things that I can't find. Today, I fought a battle in my brain, and I'm rattling the cage that is my mind. Over hills and through the fiery peaks of love, a heart so cold it could freeze. Through the wilderness, a hurricane above, till I could finally see the forest for the trees.